It's 6 o'clock. Can we get started? Cool. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I'd like to begin the Tiburon Parks Open Spaces and Trails Commission meeting for September 28th, 2023. David, can you please call the roll?
Chair Byrne.
Here. Sorry about that. Just letting that hear that one last time.
Commissioner McInerney.
Here.
Commissioner Judge.
Here.
Commissioner Holmbrook. Here. All present.
Great. Any oral communications?
So yes, this is public comment on anything not on the agenda.
And just a reminder, you have 3 minutes. So go ahead, take a seat. Perfect.
Hey, good evening, Commissioners. My name is Ian Altman. I'm a 35-year resident of Tiburon. Last 15 years with Cypress Hollow. I congratulate the Commission on the recent strategic planning. Good. The recent strategic planning activity, it has engendered a lot of discussion about the future of Tiburon Parks in our community. So thank you. While you're focused on long-term planning, I have a very simple short-term request to ask of you. Could you please plant some grass in Cypress Hollow Park? It is currently, there is no grass. It's currently a giant field of dirt and dust. It's actually quite unhealthy for the children who play in the park, for the adults who hang out. Not a very large commitment. It's not a very big park. But at one point there was grass. There has been none for at least a few years. Logical time, I would think, to plant would be in the fall, just before the rains, and would just like to make that request of the Commission. I'll use my remaining 90 seconds to answer any questions, or thank you for your time.
Cool. Yeah, during this part, we don't have questions and answers, but I think we probably speak for all of us. I say thank you very much for that. And we've talked, it's been a couple of years since we talked about Cypress Hollow at length. So thank you for flagging this. And yeah, it's very much appreciated.
Okay, football scores, nothing?
14-3.
Yeah, thank you.
Already. And just for everybody else who's here, thank you all for coming to our Tiburon Parks Open Spaces and Trails Commission. Just as a reminder, if you didn't hear, right now is a time for members of the public to share any thoughts on anything that you'd like to address that is not on the agenda, So we'll get to all the agenda items, and each one of those will have public comment. So yeah, ma'am, please go ahead and have a seat. And you have 3 minutes.
Got it. Thank you, Chair, and the rest of the post committee. Really appreciate you being here and listening to us. I also am a member of Cypress Hollow. I live right directly across.
Name. I might have missed it. And
name Suzanne Mellon. That's Mellen. I live at 70 Cypress Hollow Drive. And first, I want to commend you for the master planning that you're doing. I think it's fantastic, and I'm excited to see what good things will come out of that, for not just for our park, but the whole park system in Tiburon, which is great. And we know those things take time, and it may be a while before we see the fruits of your labor. So in the interim, I am requesting, as Ian was too, that something be done with Cypress Hollow Park, because it is, it's like the grapes of wrath. You can be walking down the street and somebody strolling through the park, and there's dust and dirt that arises. And it used to be a verdant park, and it is very much a dust bowl now. And not just the grass that has gone away, but just in general, the greenery has been disseminated. So I've also encouraged a real professional look at the irrigation system. It has not, that park has not been fully renovated in 30 years. And I've seen other parks renovated once, 2 times, 3 times. So it really needs a full look. And I don't know what the situation, the answer is for the grass, but I have been reading about grass alternatives, that there are different grasses that require less water, that may be more native in nature, that there could be another solution other than just laying down traditional green sod. I don't know, it's not my area of expertise, but some solution is definitely needed. It's a highly utilized park, morning to night, by all sorts of constituents in our town, outside of our town. We love the park, and we just love it it needs some tender loving care. So thank you for your time and attention. I know that Angela and Chuck, you visited our park in 2019, and we appreciated your efforts at that time. So thank you for listening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Susan.
Does anybody else who is present in the room have any public comments? And if I'm not mistaken, David, then we can open it up to folks online. If anybody online would like to make comments or on the Zoom on anything not on the agenda today.
Yeah, we do have one attendant. If the attendant would like to comment, just use your raise your hand function on the Zoom bar on the bottom, and I'll be able to promote you to speak. No, does not look like.
Okay, fantastic. Not seeing anybody else with communications. Like to move on to any commissions or staff briefing. And if I may take some liberties just real quick as folks are walking out. Discussion item number 1 tonight on our agenda is an update on the master plan. So you can tune in on Zoom for anybody. You might want to tune in if you because it might be a while till we get to that item. I just want to flag for folks that we will be getting an update on the master plan later on this meeting. With that, any other commission or staff briefings? No, hear none. Okay, fantastic. I would like to move to the next item, which is approving the minutes from our May 16th 2023 meeting. Has everybody have them and had a chance to take a look at them?
Chair, I wasn't at that meeting, so I'll have to abstain.
Right. I will entertain a motion for those of you who were present. Commissioner Judge.
May I move to approve the minutes, please?
Second.
We have they've been moved and seconded. David, could you please call the roll?
I think since we're in person now, I can just do all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And any against? None, with Commissioner Holmbrook abstaining since he was not at the meeting. The minutes pass.
Fantastic. So moving on to our first action item of the night, getting into it. This first action item for everybody is election of a new chair of the Post Commission and a new vice chair. The chair and vice chair will serve in those positions for the fiscal year 2023 through 2024. So essentially till next fall. With that, the chairman of the commission serves as the chair of the nominating committee. Since Isaac was vice chair, right? Yeah, so since we no longer have a vice chairman because he was elected to town council, David, do we need to have a vice chairman for the nominating committee itself? Well, no. We don't need one? Okay, fantastic. So at this point then, I would like to ask for nominations from the committee for a new chair of the commission.
I nominate this judge.
I second.
Fantastic. We have a motion and a second. David, can you please call the, I'm sorry, Commissioner Judge, would you accept?
Yes.
Fantastic. David, could you call the roll on this?
Yes, commissioners, all in favor of Liz Judge being nominated as the chair for year 23-24, say aye.
Aye.
Any against? None. Motion passes. Liz Judge, congratulations. You will be the chair at the next meeting till next fall. You'll be the chair.
Yeah.
And now
Out right now?
yes, you are supposed to actually switch
Yes.
right now. After for action item 2. Yeah.
Okay, congratulations.
Thank you.
We need to elect a vice chair.
Yeah, we do. So just Judge.
Yeah. So Judge, Commissioner, Chair Judge now is there.
Is there any theme music with the changing of chairs? Do.
So now the next step is Chair Judge will now ask for nominations for our vice chair.
Okay. Feels comfortable. I'd like to take nominations for vice chair.
I'd like to nominate Chuck Hornbrook.
Second.
Mr. Holmbrook, do you accept?
Accept.
Okay. Commissioners, all in favor of Commissioner Holbrook as vice chair? Say aye.
Aye.
Any against? None? Congratulations, Mr. Holbrook. One thing I do want to add for any of the listeners I should have probably mentioned it during briefings, but we are right now accepting applications for a new or vacant member here for the post commission. So please contact our clerk and go on our website and submit your application so that town council will be interviewing for an applicant for that position here in the near future.
Okay, so we are moving to action item number 2, I believe. This is the action item around the tree permit application. We will have a presentation. I think this is a presentation from.
Yes, Chair. So I'll kind of give you a background story here on this tree, and we do have the applicant that is here as well this evening that will present as well in regards to this eucalyptus tree in Blackie's pasture. Let me get the okay, let me get my let me turn off the light.
Oh, I can help you, David.
Oh,
That's what we're here for.
This work, yes. Okay. So Dr. Najibi is the applicant here for this tree removal. He followed all the procedures and protocols with the planning department in regards to requesting this tree to be removed. And I'm gonna show you the tree in question is a eucalyptus tree right at the end of Greenwood Beach Road, where it meets the parking lot for Blackie's pasture. Dr. Najibi is directly across the street where the pointer is at right now. Every other year, Dr. Najibi submits or applies for an encroachment permit with the town of Tiburon to top the tree. And this has been going on for at least as long as I have been here, since 2019, that I know of, that the tree gets topped. And one of the stipulations with topping the tree is having Public Works, Parks staff out there to monitor the tree trimming, pruning, and topping. This year, the applicant did approach town asking if he could, instead of trimming or topping the tree, if he could remove the tree and in its place plant another tree and include anything else that the neighbors on Greenwood Beach Road would like to screen Tiburon Boulevard and or the parking lot. And this tree would be something that Public Works would approve. Planning Commission would have to approve the species, and it'd be a slow growing tree that does not grow that high. So with that being said, since it is on public land, we did come to post commission this evening to basically hear what you would recommend moving forward in regards to if this tree, if you recommend the removal of this tree and the planting and replanting another tree or anything, any other vegetation in its place. And I have one more picture here that I would like to share that is actually from the applicant's property, showing in perspective how the tree affects his view. So if I'm not mistaken, this picture is from the property itself, from the backyard, looking towards the bay, the city. So this area here is blocking all of his view of the bay. So at this point, the applicant is here with us, and he does have a slideshow that I will also broadcast here. And If you have any questions after his presentation, we have staff here from the planning department that would be able to answer any questions for you.
David, question procedurally, how long does the doctor have to present his information? It's 5 minutes, I think, or 3. I just want.
It's usually 10 to 15.
10 to 15
minutes.
minutes.
Can we be
For the
explicit?
applicant.
10 or 15, I mean.
You can decide. So in most instances, the board or the chair decides how long, but it's usually anywhere from 10 to 15.
That's what it states.
Most.
What's in
boards-
the code? I'm sorry, I've having gone to town planning for presenting my house and other things. I know it's specific. So I just want to
The
be
agenda
specific,
says
so the
10.
doctor is clear. And that other people who are here who are making comments feel as though their time is.
So the
finished.
agenda always says 10 to 15. So that's what's stipulated. And it's up to the new chair to decide what she would like.
Okay, thank you. Chair,
And this is just for the presentation, not for any discussion or anything that
Right.
follows, right?
Normally what happens, I'm jumping on David. David's doing the slide stuff. So normally what happens is the applicant usually has 10 minutes and then the public each has a 3-minute. And then afterwards for rebuttal, the applicant has 5 minutes. That's how it normally is played out. So that's how the 10 to 15, I think it's established.
Okay, well, that sounds good to me. I'd like to propose we stick with that 10 minutes, Dr. Najibi. Is that okay?
Plenty of time. Thanks.
Okay,
I'll let you know once I get it.
Okay. All right. So good evening.
Let me start it.
My name is Bob Najibi and I live at 11 Greenwood Court, which as you showed was across the parking lot from Blackie's pasture. I've been there since 2010. And when we moved in, the tree was big and it blocks essentially our view of the marina area of San Francisco, right? So the bay and the view basically from the marina to, you know, wherever west it goes from there. It's just annoying more than anything else. It's not, you know, it's a first world problem to have a, you know, a eucalyptus tree blocking your view of San Francisco. But it's annoying nonetheless, and I think that it should be addressed in a way that keeps me from having to do it every couple of years at a big expense. The expense is not just the arborist to come out and do the work, but the permits that are required each time I want to do it to the town. So I got a permit in 2010. It's basically a standing permit that allows me to go in and top the tree. But each time I have to get permits to do it, the encroachment permit to do it. And over the years, I've spent a lot of money on keeping this thing trimmed, a lot more than I want to count. And so the permit that was issued provides that the tree be topped to a level that's below the water line from my home. Are there pictures up there from?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
I'll do it.
okay.
I'll do it.
Might have been on that picture that you showed.
The first one?
Yeah.
Oh, I'll bring that up. now.
Okay.
That's on.
So what I want to show is that I have not been trimming it all the way down to that level for all these years. I actually just realized it in reviewing the permit information. If I were to trim it from to a level that's below the water line from my home, it would be way down here, right? The water line is here, so it would be quite low. And we've never trimmed it that far. So I just wanted to make a point of that. We can go back to the other slides, please. And so I just provided a few pictures. This from Tiburon Boulevard. Just shows the size of the tree. And I don't know that I would necessarily call it a tree more than I would call it a massively overgrown bush. it's a eucalyptus bush, not a tree. I don't know what the correct species for it is. Next slide, please. This is a view from Greenwood Beach, and you can see that it doesn't actually have a single trunk. It has several trunks that kind of emerge from the ground. And so I think that's important to address if this tree is part of the heritage size. I think there's like a 60-inch or something diameter. If the trunk is 60 inches, it's considered a heritage. I don't think this falls into that category because it's not a single trunk. It's multiple smaller kind of branches of the tree growing from the ground. Next slide, please.
No, it's not moving.
Okay, yeah. Any of them. This is. So one thing that I wanted to clarify, you mentioned in your opening remarks that I had offered to replant the area, which I have not. So my intention is to remove the tree. And the reason that I don't think it needs to be replanted is because there's plenty of other vegetation in that area that provides sufficient cover for the neighbors on Greenwood Beach. And you can see that in some of these, if you back up. So you could see in this slide here, so here's the tree. This is the view from Greenwood Beach Road. And there's all of this vegetation here that provides a barrier between Tiburon Boulevard and the parking lot. And also, these trees are not in the greatest condition right now. I believe largely because this guy is sucking out the life. It's blocking the sun. It's taking nutrients out of the soil. I think if this tree were removed, these guys would flourish. And if you go to the next slide, it's a close up of these guys here, right here. This guy's not a happy tree. And I think it's on its way out if it's something's not done to address the health of the soil and the tree around it. Next slide, please. And I can't see the sun's in the way, but this is just showing. You can see it on the TV there. Again, it's just showing that it's not one trunk. It's multiple branches coming out of the ground that form this eucalyptus bush. Oh, great, thank you. And the last thing that I wanted to just address, and I'm sure this is on everybody's mind, is that in previous times when we've looked at this tree and talked about how eucalyptus trees are dangerous and are fire risk, things have changed since then. I think everybody has a much heightened awareness of fire risk. And we know that the eucalyptus tree is loaded with oil and is a dangerous fire hazard. I think it would be in everybody's best interest, certainly the neighbors that are right across the street from it, to not have this tree there that's a big fire risk. And if we remove it and allow these other trees to flourish, I think it's a much prettier and a much safer look for the entrance to our Blackie's pasture from Greenwood Beach. I think that's the last of the slides. Is that? Yeah. Oh, and this is just another view. There's a waterway right here, a culvert that the tree is kind of encroaching on. I don't know how that's going to affect drainage moving forward as the roots get bigger and the limbs get bigger. If there's going to be any effect, that's, I guess, for the town people to determine. But it seems to me that it's getting a little bit close to this drainage ditch. But you could see, I don't think there would be a problem with privacy here. I think that's all I have. I think the gist of my point is that I just don't think that it's right for me to have to trim this tree every couple of years at a huge expense when it's really not doing any good for anyone, and it's a harmful tree to have. So it would just be better and easier to remove it and allow the other trees there to do better. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any commissioner questions? Commissioner Burr?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just one main question to throw out there. The tree currently has all the caution, there's caution tape around the base of the tree. Curious if anybody knows where that caution tape came from, if that was put in by the applicant or if that was by the town.
That was a requirement for me to mark the tree in question.
Got it.
So I trekked in there and wrapped it.
Thank you. That was my main question.
Commissioner Hornbrook?
Just one question. You had mentioned, and I appreciate the impact of trees on views and a similar situation in my own neighborhood. So I definitely empathize. Just a question on expense. You had mentioned that a couple of times. So we know specifically.
It's been just to top it, it's somewhere around 3,000, 3,500. It just keeps going up every year. It's gone up. This time around, it's gone up substantially more. Plus the cost of the permits, which I think is usually around 200, 300. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Uh.
And I also made a trip over that's where I was before coming here. So I appreciate the photos you provided as well. So thank you.
I didn't know that you guys were so sophisticated. I had them printed and I was going to hand out pictures. So it was nice to have that.
That's okay. The small business appreciated you printing out photos.
Question. What other trees are planted next to this eucalyptus? And I'm not a arborist, but are those trees going to grow as tall as what the eucalyptus is? Then you're going to be asking to trim those trees.
Just from my observation, those trees are not fast growing. And there's trees to the east of this eucalyptus that are also on town property that are big, but also in the since I've been here in 2010, they've grown just a little bit, right? So they haven't really been impactful. So this thing grows like crazy. I mean, it's literally a weed. I mean, it grows very fast and dwarfs everything else around it.
My first commission meeting, and Commissioner Hornbrook and I were trying to remember when that was, but there was a group of residents who wanted to trim the eucalyptus trees on top of South Knoll. And I had no idea I was walking into a firestorm, literally, of like how controversial this would be they wanted to remove a lot more than one tree, and these were not trees that were looking more like a bush. They were actual eucalyptus trees. And in those, I learned a lot about it from former Commissioner Wood about volunteers. And a volunteer is a shoot from the eucalyptus. So if you cut the eucalyptus down and do nothing, it's going to sprout out all these volunteers, and you're going to end up with a small bush that's going to be a bigger bush and a bigger bush.
Mm-hmm.
What is your plan to keep that tree from regenerating itself?
If it's removed?
Yeah.
I guess that's up to the arborist to work out. I know that they cut it down. They have a stump grinder that they can take, and I've also seen it where they cap the little the stubs with something to keep it from sprouting.
But no chemicals. We're not like
no chemicals,
because that's right next to the water, so we wouldn't want
chemicals.
to use chemicals. Would Dr. Najibi need to come back to town? We don't meet often enough. You don't need to come back to post. Would Dr. Najibi need to come back to town with a plan for making sure this, if we approve
Huh?
this, for making sure that this tree doesn't sprout volunteers and make sure that it's gone?
Once the tree is removed, town public works, because we maintain it, will make sure nothing comes back.
Chair, I have another question, but it's for town.
Please. Oh,
So,
we can do
so
that,
with,
yeah.
yeah, so just, so I'm being over there and seeing the culvert and seeing it's a drainage, it's a storm drain drainage into the bay, and then also with the Greenwood Butch Beach renovations that's going on, all these other pieces, there's some toyon trees that are actually directly to the south, which are natives, by the way. What is town's, I mean, and that the tree in question is right on the embankment. So with removal of that, there might be some further inundation. It's supposed to be a wet winter again. So it's hard it's a difficult place in which there's gonna be more discussion, but the question is what's town's obligation if the tree solely is removed and paid for by a citizen of the town? What's the town's accountability, or is there something on that to make sure that the area is still maintained? And whether or not a replacement like an oak or something like that within the embankment, or is it like, no, we chop it out, we stump it out, and then that's it? What's the obligation of the town once this radical and from a landscape design, because it's not on Europe shouldn't be on the hook to make it look nice. You're just trying to address a problem of always having to spend $3,000 every 2 years. What's the town's obligation to that? Or is there anything? And it's okay if you say, no, we don't have anything. That's cool too.
So let's put my little guy back on. So if I'm understanding what you're saying is, so we remove this tree, let's say you approve the removal of this tree, we have this area. We would be responsible to make sure there's no volunteers that come out. And in some instances, we do look at replacement materials to go in there. I don't know enough about what the other trees are. We haven't asked for an arborist report or anything like that to determine that. What would be best, either to leave the area as is and allow the other trees to come more to life, or whether or not there needs to be something else that's planted. I mean, at this time, we haven't approved a tree permit. So that might be something that we would want to consider, but at this time, we haven't looked at that. So there's no actual obligation for us to do anything about that.
Do you have a copy of the standing permit that I have? I should have brought one, but
I have it here.
There's a report in there from town staff that that specifically says that there's no risk to erosion or anything like that. Should this tree be removed?
So, and I don't doubt that.
Yeah.
Because I don't believe that the erosion's the issue, or the issue that you're speaking about, Vice Chair Cornbrook. It is more about, do we then do any other improvements or having any maintenance in that area? And in some instances, we do require replacements. In some instances, it's not. We obviously wouldn't look at something as a fast growing tree. It might be some type of ground cover or something like that, but we wouldn't look at a similar type of tree that might grow large. And I don't know if there's space for, as you suggested, an oak. I have no idea.
Can I ask a follow-up question? I am curious what the precedent is if a resident wants a tree removed, gets the permit, pays for the tree removal, and then it is determined afterward that there should be a tree to replace it. Is there a precedent for the resident paying for the replacement tree?
Not once the approval is completed. So the normal process, this is on a public property, so it's a little bit different. You as a citizen who would come in and want to remove some trees, we would look at what's there. We would look at what your proposal is. There might be a requirement for a replacement, not all the time. If there is, you do it then. Once we've approved that tree permit, we don't have the authority to go back and ask for it at that time. Again.
So it sounds unclear whether or not a replacement would be advised or required, right? What needs to happen for us to understand that?
With what we have here this evening, there's no replacement that
No.
will go there. It'll be just removed. Now, we do have the green team that tends the area, and as they came out and presented to Post last year about planting a tree there at Blackie's gravesite, we could probably, they may come to the commission this coming January when they propose what they're going to do this coming year in 2024. And that may be something that they look at, that they may come and say, we'd like to plant this type of tree here, and the commission would look at it. Or usually we have residents that call in and want to plant a tree in memory of, they want to donate a tree. At that point, we would come here to the commission. Well, they would actually, they'd have to pick a specific tree that the town approves, and at that point we would come to the commission. It'd be a public meeting where we would present the type of tree that we may want to plant out there, and then we'd discuss it.
Okay,
So I think I want to follow up on that just a little bit, because I think in this situation, it's a little bit different. And if I'm understanding what the commission is doing, this application does not include the replacement. However, what we're looking for you to provide to us is direct us. Maybe we need to look at a replacement, maybe we don't. That's up to you to provide that recommendation to us. We haven't done that study to look at it, but we have looked at, this is a eucalyptus tree. It's not a tree that we generally prefer or look to say no to if somebody comes in to take it out. And we have them removed quite frequently, honestly. It's one of the trees that in a pine. So if you're asking us whether or not we looked at replacement, we didn't. That's not what's being considered. I agree with Mr. Eshu. However, it is within your purview to recommend something with this tonight.
okay, thank you. And Dr. Najibi, you said that there was some kind of assessment or study done that said that this will not cause erosion, so there's no erosion need to replace.
Right,
Okay.
right.
Do we have any other questions? Do we have any public comments on this?
So I think we're done with the doctor, right?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Please just share your name and,
Oh, sure. Chris Petrine. I live two homes away from the tree. I've lived there since 2006.
On Greenwood Beach, right?
Greenwood Beach Road.
Could you speak into the mic so we can make
Oh,
sure
sure.
this is on the record? Thank
Sure.
you.
can you just repeat your name then?
Chris Petrine. I've lived at the home since 2006. And it does a terrific job, and I've been here through all the cuttings, and I've been here a little longer than the doctor. And as he mentioned, he purchased this house with this tree obstructing his view, which I have some sympathy for, but it was obstructing his view before he purchased the house. And I love it getting cut, because the one thing that's happened with Greenwood Beach Road and also Blackie's pasture with the there appears to be additional parking, but it receives an insane amount of traffic, which is great. I walk on Blackie's every day. But it's very noisy. And this tree, when trimmed down to even if you trimmed it to the water line, it creates a beautiful shield from I don't even know how many cars fit in there, maybe 50 cars. And just a great deal of noise, traffic, and I didn't know the cost, but if cost is the issue of trimming the tree, I think our the homeowners on our street would be happy to cover that. I certainly would. And to bring it down to the level when it is capped, it creates a great shield, and it helps him with his view. And I think that's, it's a nice alternative, because there are some other trees there that might grow, but they're, as he had mentioned, they are, and I've noticed that for 17 years, they are slow growing trees. But the screen is, it's really nice. Because of the amount of, I think we were here for a post commission years ago when, on a weekend, we get 1,000 bikers a day. Not a day, on the weekends, we easily get 1,000. I think that's what was posted even. So plus the cars that don't like going to Blackie's, they all park right in front of our house, our homes. So I think there might be another solution that would meet his needs from coming down here every 2 years. And if it's a cost issue, I think our homeowners I'd be happy to help with that. And I also want to let you know that there was one other neighbor in 444, Greg Moore and Nancy Peterson sent in a letter. I don't know if you got it in time, but Greg's an expert on this, and it's well worth the read. But I thank you all for your time, and congratulations on your new appointment.
Thank you. Thanks for your comment. David, could you pull the photo back up of like the aerial photo, the overhead photo of where the tree is on the land?
Sure. One thing we need to make sure that there's no other public comment, and then if there's any public comment, and then close that, and then we do.
Thank you.
Sure, no problem.
Any other public comments, please? Online, yeah.
Oh, my name is Sis Muller. I live at 458 Greenwood Beach Road, right across the street from the eucalyptus tree. And I certainly have sympathy for the neighbor live up the street who can't, see over it. But that's one point of view. Our point of view is this is a beautiful tree. Just go and look at it. It's just magnificent, and it harbors a lot of birds and insects, and I feel it's really, really nice, and it's absolutely shields us from Blackie's pasture parking lot. We have had very good success with the topping of the tree. It has worked well for the neighbors and for I think the person who's paying for the topping. But to take that tree out, to me, would be really, really bad. I'm sorry, I'm not in favor of that. Although I can understand his point of view, of course, but that's not our point of view. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other public comments? Yes. Please.
Good evening to you all. My name is Bruce Abbott. I also live on Greenwood Beach Road. The proposal to take this tree out, if granted, should be accompanied by some fairly strict requirements for it, because that tree does protect Greenwood Beach Road from the noise and the light and the glare from the parking lot, and additionally, it is indeed a very pretty tree. Now, I noticed through the presentation, the area around that tree is also, I've noticed in real life. To take that tree out is going to leave a gaping hole, and there is not sufficient foliage there now to cover up that hole. There should be some obligation to restore that area to some point that would be equivalent of what exists now, to grant a request to remove that tree without imposing upon the applicant the obligation to do something to compensate for it would be wrong. I invite you please to take another look there and see what the removal of that tree would leave. It'd be a great bare spot that needs to be accounted for. I'd also like to point out that is a beautiful tree. It's a heritage tree. It serves our needs quite well. And I agree with Chris Petrine. That tree was there when the house was purchased. It was under the circumstances have not changed dramatically since then. So I join my neighbors in requesting that the tree be left alone. And secondly, if you do agree that it should be taken out, that you insist on having something put back in there to replace it, to cover the hole that it will leave. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comments, including online? Do we have any other public comments online?
No, we do not.
Okay, then we will move to commissioner comments.
Well, we had one.
Maybe one online. Let's give it a
Greg,
second.
would you, if you'd like to speak, please raise your hand. You had it up for a quick second. Okay, we do.
Okay.
Good evening. Thank you for rescuing me there. Can you hear me?
We can, thank you.
Good. Well, I join my neighbors. I'm on Greenwood Beach Road. And I would add that I've spent 4 decades of my life working on parks and open space in the Bay Area in San Francisco, San Mateo, Marin, and Sonoma County. So I am very familiar with issues of tree removal as being very painful to decide for commissioners like you. So I'm sympathetic to everyone here. I would just add that fundamentally, parks are about nature and trees. Just like libraries are about books and museums are about art. So when you decide to remove a tree from a park where it adds greenery, it deserves careful consideration. And this tree belongs to everyone in Tiburon. And so I ask you to consider in your deliberations whether the request of one person, if you're taking in mind the entire community and the value of trees in the town of Tiburon. I did submit a letter outlining why I thought this tree had merit in terms of its age and beauty, its visual screening, its habitat and historic values, and generally what just trees mean to cities as greenery in urban areas. And I also believe that the applicant had a number of thoughts about the tree. One, that it's not a tree, it's a bush. One, that its many trunks don't qualify as a trunk. 2, 3, that the plants nearby were not healthy. And 4, that the tree didn't provide any good to anyone. So I think there is a need on behalf of the town and behalf of the community of Tiburon to really do a professional arborist look at this situation to determine what is the condition of the trees, what will happen if the tree is removed, and what really are the impacts in the view that will result from this. So I just ask you to be careful in your deliberations. I don't think you have the information tonight to approve this request or to add the conditions on this request if you do approve it. And it's my recommendation actually that you don't approve it, certainly not with the information that's in front of you tonight. So thank you so much for your careful deliberations, for what you do for the town and its parks and open space. And I wish you the best in your deliberations. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Do we have any other online public comments?
Chair, we do not.
Okay, then we will move to commissioner comments. Do we have any Oh, yes, that goes right now. Thank you. getting a lot of much needed help from the other commissioners. Now is the chance for 5 minutes from Dr. Najibi for the rebuttal, if there's anything you want to share. And if you do, please do come to the microphone.
I don't have too much of a rebuttal except to say that this tree is very fast growing. It's not indigenous to the area that we live. It's an invasive tree. It's a high fire risk. And I just think that we can do a whole lot better than having this in that space. I understand the need and the want to have protection from the parking lot. I also live in an area where we get a lot of road noise, and so I understand that. I just think that we can do better, and I think the foliage that's there now, once this tree is removed, we'll have a chance to fill in that space in a much better way than what's there now. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we're ready for the commissioner comments. Do we have any comments from commissioners?
Before deliberation?
Chair,
Oh,
Chair,
Commissioner Hornbrook,
oh,
please.
Chair, you closed the public comment, correct? Yeah, public hearing.
I don't think I officially closed it, no, so
Yeah,
now I will.
yeah.
The public comment is officially closed. Thank you all for sharing your thoughts and for showing up and for being online. We really do appreciate it. So with that, third try's a charm, or maybe this is the fourth try, but we'll go to commissioner comments.
So good.
Commissioner Hornberg.
Yeah, I think that's what's interesting, and I just so appreciate everybody being here and the comments from both the applicant and the residents nearby and those online. Is I think it's and maybe staff might correct me if I'm wrong, but if this was like a private home and a tree next door, a town requests that actually you figure it out amongst yourselves. I mean, so I live in the neighborhood of Hillhaven. If there's a tree that maybe wasn't in the way when I bought the house or when we did buy the house, and then the tree grows up, I have a neighbor and it's obstructing my view, we need to connect and figure out with each other to figure out like let's remove this. Can you trim your hedge? Can you do this? And then you bring that to the HOA, because if you need the HOA to help kind of encourage that. And then ultimately, if there's not a meeting of the minds, you escalate it to town. I think that's the process. I don't think that's happened in this case. I think that because there's a late piece of email from the neighbors in the Reedlands, which is the neighborhood that Dr. GB's in. So I think that, and the neighbors in Greenwoodville on Greenwood Street basically said like, hey, we'd love to be part of this deliberation and figure out a solution. And the gentleman who actually left said, hey, I'd be happy to maybe even pay for part of that topping. I think that step needs to happen. And I apologize that it means delaying things. But in terms of that process, that's kind of where my mind's at. That the neighbors didn't communicate with each other effectively enough yet. And happy to be a conduit to that, or sit in a room or buy coffee, or we can hang out at Pete's and spend money locally. Happy to do that, to make sure that happens, to bring the parties together. I think that's maybe what needed to happen. That's just kind of where my mind's at.
Thank you. Commissioner Burr?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Judge. The reason I'm smiling, Commissioner Hornbrook, is I'm reminded these trees. Can everybody hear me? Now it's on. Thank you, Chair Judge. Commissioner Hornbrook, the reason I'm smiling is it reminds me when I was a very young lawyer, one of the first hearings I ever sat in were two neighbors fighting over a tree. And I remember the judge I was working for at the time said this case should have been resolved over a bottle of wine. And instead, it was like $800,000 in legal fees between the two parties because they could not reach an agreement. And it got bad. So I appreciate the tone and tenor of the conversation by the applicant and other neighbors this evening. I am struck that it is, I mean, from what it sounds like tonight, it's been completely on Dr. Najibi, if I pronounce that correctly, to have to shoulder the cost of caring for this tree. And so I definitely want to recognize that. I don't really feel like that would be, if this tree remains, like it would be fair for him to continue to have to shoulder all the costs of that. So for whatever that is worth, I do think, as we heard from neighbors, and it was very much appreciated to hear the impact. I hadn't considered like the noise reduction that this tree provides for those folks in that area. But I do think that it would be good to have a bit more information. If the view is, and I'm just thinking out loud here, if the view is the issue, it sounds like Mr. Najibi has the ability from the town to top that and reduce the height of it by a decent amount. I'm not sure what the total amount would be, but it's quite a bit. Which to cut it down towards the water line so it doesn't just obstruct his view. I would be curious if there are other neighbors in the area who are affected by the view. And while I'm certainly sympathetic to the views, and for those who are attending, we recently had an item about planting a tree down at Blackie's pasture, and we were quite concerned about whether or not it was ultimately at some point in the future going to block somebody's view. So we're very considerate on these issues. The staff did a great job having some information on there in terms of our staff or our town considerations and the problems with eucalyptus trees and all that. But I think that Vice Chair Hornbrook brought up some good points about it was actually Commissioner McInerney about if we rip this out, what is going to happen and what's going to regrow there. So personally, it would be great to have a little bit more scientific information from an arborist. We've had those before. I don't know who shouldered the cost of those reports, but it would be nice to just have a more specific understanding of what is going to happen in that location before we rip this tree out. And I'll be very clear and transparent. I drove over to check out that tree. I live just up the way from the parking lot at Blackie's pasture. I'm not too far from there. There's a bunch of other trees in that area. It does look like this would be a tree that I would be quite concerned about in the wintertime, just based on it seems to be a bit top heavy and the way it's kind of angled right now above that little creek. So I do think that there should be longer term concern about the tree, even though from staff it said that the tree was healthy and there had been no concern. So just a few thoughts off the top of my head.
Thank you. Any other comments?
So I read the staff report, which was super helpful, and all the letters submitted, and listened to the people that took the time to come in today and online and voice their concerns. Where do I want to go from there? So there's so many strands here. The town ordinance, tree ordinance, allows people to maintain their view from when they purchase the home. I've worked with my neighbors, often the ones that live above me. I say, that's the back of my head. I don't see it. Go ahead and cut, whatever. And then I have to maybe bring a bottle of wine to my neighbor and work on my view forward. And she needs a little bit more greasing of the wheels. But ultimately, we work it out between each other. So I think for the past 13 years, possibly, where Dr. Najibi has been trimming this tree for 3,000 to 3,500 and rising every single time, it requires an unnecessary expense at his end and time. And when you read the tree ordinance, it says, when reviewing requests from private parties or other public agencies for removal, alteration, or planting of trees or shrubs on town property, the town shall consider the following factors prior to making a decision. Type and size. It is a non-native species. It is, as in the staff report, it is an undesirable species, and it is an invasive species. I'm not sure that the tree has a lot of prominence or historical significance for that specific area. I was actually I went there also before the meeting to see it in person and take some pictures and see what was going on. There seems to be a lot going on in that area. And by going on in that area, I mean, there's not a lot of maintenance going on at all. There are vines creeping up and possibly killing the other trees that are nearby there. And so, but it could also be the eucalyptus tree. I don't know, sucking the water from those other trees. The other trees near it, certainly one of them, I was taking pictures of the leaves. It doesn't look like it's very happy at all. According, I believe the staff report says it's a non-use area. So it's not like an active park area where somebody's gonna go sit under it and have a picnic. That also applies to the benefits. It doesn't provide shade or screening. I suppose sorry, I'll backtrack on that. It does give some people screening for noise and light, as mentioned before. It is a detriment to some neighbors, and Dr. Najibi, you didn't mention this, but I don't know if your other neighbors also were unhappy with the tree growing into their view. But it does give maintenance obligations to the town and to the applicant as to maintaining it, but also all the things that are falling off of it and are fodder for fire on the ground. Cost to remove and or replace, including ongoing maintenance. Yes, that and we mentioned there was no risk of erosion. But I do see both sides of this. So it's a very difficult decision to make. I would have loved to have an arborist give their opinion. And it's always hard to say, cut down a tree that seems to be healthy, but it also seems to be a tree that has not been, the top has been maintained, but the bottom is a disaster. It's almost like a poor kid that didn't have braces. There's stuff going all over the place. It seems to me, which is why I brought up volunteers. It seems to me that there was one tree and then all these other volunteers came up from the tree, and that's why it looks like a bush and it looks unsightly and not like a proper tree. I did hear the discussion of not removing habitat from nesting animals, and if approved, I would obviously say we need to remove it at a time that something wouldn't happen to anybody that could be any animal that could be using the tree. I think those are all my points.
Another comment,
Yeah,
Commissioner?
if I can just chime in on that. Yeah, thank you, Commissioner McInerney. Yeah, the reason I asked the question earlier about the caution tape was I genuinely thought that some safety expert or the town put that caution tape out there. Not knowing anything about the actual tree health, just from a site perspective, and I'm looking at photo of it right here. I mean, that whole area is super overgrown. We're going to get more to this, but I mean, we're allowed to ask each other questions, of course. I would direct this to the lone member of the subcommittee on the master plan. Is this area at all part of that discussion, Commissioner McInerney, from what you know?
Green, this part, as somebody in the audience will know, that part of Blackie's pasture is zoned for passive recreation. Nothing can happen there besides passive recreation. So it's not on the slate to put pickleball courts in there. Don't worry. We're going to put a pump track in instead. Yeah, so it's not necessary. No, that has not been brought up as any area of discussion.
Thank you. And then I did have one last kind of point here, or sort of question. I'm curious to get the other commissioners' thoughts on this. The point was well taken on the noise. Again, I hadn't really considered that, partially because if I'm not mistaken, the folks who live on Greenwood Lane, the most of the traffic comes in front of the tree, so the tree would be behind where a lot of that noise probably would come from, if I'm not mistaken, in terms of where this tree is situated. Meaning that like people are getting to the old rail trail if they're coming from the other part of town, or like, I see a lot of the traffic entering on the Greenwood, on the beach, it's Greenwood Lane, right? Greenwood Lane side of this tree,
You mean a lot of the like
noise and
bike and
bike and
pedestrian
people
Well,
coming
but you
through.
park,
cars?
but you park right there in front of it. I mean, that's where I park, like
I've
right.
never
right-
been there, so. Other than
You walked
going through
over, nice.
I parked there today.
I guess actually a question, to Commissioner McNary about on the parks and open space plan. Do you guys talk about O&M? Operations and maintenance in terms of all the parks and comments of the space that we have or lack thereof? Because I mean, again, this is a public works waterway. It's a storm drain, goes right to the, I'm pretty sure it drains right off of Tiburon Boulevard down that way. So
I'm gonna defer to David, but also answer that, yes, it's on the master plan, but we have not discussed it in subcommittee.
thanks.
I do have some comments, if that's okay. If you have any other questions, feel free. I think these are really thoughtful points. I also appreciate the tenor and tone of the discourse here. Commissioner McInerney, really thoughtful points as usual. And everyone else here too. For me, where I stand on this is that I do think we should bring in an arborist because there are questions about drainage. And there are questions about basically the quality of this tree and the surrounding trees. And there are arguments for taking out the tree that are based on the tree not being a good, not being in good condition. So we should actually get a real professional assessment about what kind of condition it's in. So I think that's one thing. I do think the proponents of the tree removal should pay for the cost of the arborist. I don't think the town should be in the business of preemptively taking out or removing plants or trees that aren't known to cause an actual problem to the landscape, to the park, or to the area. If it's a cosmetic problem, I think the proponents should pay for the arborist assessment. And I do think that it sounds like the tree provides real value to the neighborhood, to some of the neighborhood, maybe half of the neighborhood on one side don't like the tree because of the view shed blockage, and the other half really highly value the tree because of the noise, the shield from the noise and the light and the traffic that comes in right at that side. And I think it's a tough position for town council to be taking sides on this, or for a town commission, a parks commission at that, to be taking sides on this if it's not about the health of the park. So I would say let's get an arborist, let's get the proponents of bringing the tree down to foot the cost. If the decision is to replace the tree, and I don't think we should make that until we have the assessment of the health of the trees, then I do think the proponents should pay for the cost. Obviously, they're offering to pay for the cost of removing the tree, but I think they should pay for the cost of replacing the tree, because it's very clear that one half of this neighborhood values what that tree offers. And it sounds like they would value what any tree offers in that space based on their arguments. And this is something I think Commissioner Hornbrook has it, which they can talk about together, what type of tree, whether that could be accepted. But my additional thought is that the proponents should pay for the cost of the replacement. I don't think the town should get into the business of paying for new trees because they pose cosmetic and not health problems for the health of the park or the surrounding vegetation. So that's just my position. I think it would set a really tough precedent. I also think in terms of, the town is responsible for maintaining the view that someone bought their property. I think that's true to some extent and then on the other hand, to some extent, trees grow, and I don't think the town can pay for the topping of all the trees that are growing, which they all are. this is a particular fast growing tree. So I think this is a reasonable sort of common ground to put forward, is that it might make sense to assess through an arborist the health of the tree and the surrounding trees, and then to incur cost on the proponents, which it sounds like, Dr. Najibi, it sounds like from the late mail, there's a whole homeowners association that's on your side and maybe would be willing to pay for some of those costs. Those are my comments. Commissioner Hornbrick?
No, I think great comments. I think we need to make a decision. There's a chair on the recommendations from town staff. We took public testimony. We need to either say, yes, we approve the application for the permit for removal, or we don't. And we can also add stipulations on those pieces.
Does anyone want to make a motion?
So before
well,
you
can we
make a
just have
motion,
confirmation?
I do want to, I'm a little uncomfortable with one thing that normally what happens in tree kind of discussions like this, the applicant is responsible to pay for the arborist report. We don't normally look to the community to pay for that unless they want to come forward and help with it. So I just want to caution us as we are making a recommendation with how the additional information should be provided to both staff and the commission. So I just.
That's useful. Thank you. And I could amend I was going to say applicant, but it sounded like there were actually a number of people who might go, but I would say that the applicant then.
And the applicant, since this is a he this time, the applicant can come forward to the homeowners association and ask for them to contribute or to be part of that. But normally it isn't something we would require.
Thank you for that.
What is the cost of an arborist report?
Do I want to say it depends? I do, because I don't know. It depends on the extent that you're going to ask somebody to look at the tree.
It's, my understanding is in the hundreds. Like up to $500 perhaps. But I also could very well be wrong.
I think the arborist report usually runs a little more than $500.
Okay.
It is in the thousands. It is in the thousands.
Depends if it's to the town or to an individual too, I bet. There's always the Tiburon uplift in pricing.
If I may ask a question. Does the town have a preferred arborist that we tend to direct folks to, or is there a list of?
We
vendors for that?
we're not allowed to do that because that would show that we have some type of a preference.
Got it.
So normally a person goes to a list of arborists and can choose from those.
I'm just worried. I don't want us to make this a bigger deal than it is. It's a tree that costs a lot of money to top every couple years. It seems to be something that is, as we know, a fire hazard. It is non-native, it is undesirable, it's invasive. It is not in an area that is used, and it costs money for us to maintain it, and it could possibly even hurt the storm culvert. I was leaning towards wanting to have an arborist before I knew that the town was responsible for it.
The town's not
It's not the
responsible.
town, it's the
town.
applicant.
Applicant is responsible. Got it. I thought you said town. Okay.
And the applicant did not provide that.
We don't generally ask for that
Okay.
unless it's necessary because of the cost.
And just to know, commissioners, in the staff report that the tree is, based on our survey, it's in good health. So the applicant would end up paying for an expensive report that would most likely state that, it is in good health and thriving in that area.
Commissioner, I have a question I hope I don't go out of line, but if there's a way to ask the applicant if coordinating with the homeowners association and with the members who live on Greenwood Beach Road, if you've done that, I guess that's a question I should have asked you earlier. Have you reached out to your neighbors or the residents on Greenwood Beach Road?
Vice Chair, in order to do that, the
Have to
chair would
overrule-
have to open the public hearing for that conversation.
Okay, I think that would be helpful.
Okay, then I will reopen public comment and questions.
Great, thank you. I appreciate that, Chair. Doctor, if you want to step up to the mic so people in the ether can hear you. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
So your question was, have we reached out? Of course, I've reached out to my neighbors and both on Greenwood Court where I live and on East Terrace and North Terrace. So this tree has been kind of a problem for a while, even before I moved to the neighborhood. There's an email that I have from someone that lives on I think East Terrace from before I moved that that was with Mr. Nguyen, who was here before, was the town engineer.
Nick Nguyen, he
Yeah.
was the director of community.
Yeah, so so there's been some communication before. So my neighbors immediately around me are aware of it. Now, my understanding is that my neighbor next door, Bob Wally, actually went and had coffee with the Mr. Abbott that was sitting right here. And his impression when he came out of the meeting with him was that he was okay with removing the tree. So I was surprised to see him here tonight, actually opposing it. But yes, we have tried to reach out and try to come to kind of a consensus. But
Sounds like there was one meeting,
one meeting,
right?
yeah.
And I know some folks who live on your street, so I haven't spoken to whether or not you've reached out to them. But the question was actually, have you reached out to say like, hey, is this tree bother? I definitely hear you on the cost.
Yeah.
And when for a short period of time when I was on Lagoon View, there's actually a neighbor who paid for topping a bunch of cypress trees on the property I was renting at the time.
Yeah.
And they were like, okay, great. This is what we do. And I don't know if he was collecting funds from somebody or how it was happening. So my question is did you reach out?
I have tried multiple times and I've never had any
Do you have any documentation on that?
letters.
Yeah.
Sure.
I just would be helpful. I want to make sure that, again, I'm going on this. I don't know if there's enough outreach within members of the community and the removal of a tree versus like, hey, did you guys communicate and figure this out? We can't dictate that. Obviously, we're a commission, you guys.
So my sort of contention is that this is a tree that just is fast growing. And even if we get people on both sides to keep chipping in and keep paying to trim it and top it, it's just an expense that doesn't make sense. Even if you split it up amongst several people, it's still an ongoing expense that's going to keep going. And every time you top this thing, it gets worse. Each time you top it, the conditions underneath it become worse. So this is a problem it's a snowball effect that just keeps getting worse and worse each time we top it. And it's just an ongoing expense. Even if the folks on Greenwood Beach Court want to chip in, great. But I mean, how much money are we going to spend on trimming this thing that's grown out of control?
Great, thank you. I appreciate you answering my questions.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you. I will make another motion to close commissioner questions and public comment. And then I think we're in the action steps now, and I might propose.
I have a motion.
I was gonna put a proposal, but it
Okay.
might be consistent with what you're saying,
Go
but
ahead.
it's not a motion. Am I allowed to do this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So I think you make a strong argument that this is an undesirable tree. It's been classified as such, a fire risk. And there are pretty good arguments for taking out undesirable trees, as much as I don't want to be like proactive about doing that when it doesn't cause problems or when we don't have proof that it causes problems. It seems like there could be a compromise in the applicant removing the tree and replacing the tree with a native species. So I wonder if that's something we could look at, maybe skipping the arborist and just looking at the removal and the replacement and working with the neighbors on what what a tree that still provides the noise and the light and the sort of habitat would be. But please, what's your motion?
My motion was very similar. I was just gonna say, I move to approve removal of the tree with appropriate replacement to provide adequate screening.
And mine would just, my amendment would be that I think the applicant should cover the replacement. Is
Yes,
that?
yeah.
okay.
I make some comments here. I'm not sure what the cost of that would be. You know, I do feel like I'm with everything that is as in the staff report in terms of the undesirableness of the tree and the other problems with eucalyptus trees. I mean, I'm walked in here comfortable with approving a tree removal, but I do think since we heard from neighbors that you know, they feel like there's good reason to keep this a tree or something in that spot for all the reasons that we heard from shade to noise. We're just kind of shooting in the dark if we approve removal and then permit you know, without any information what the new tree would be. I just, that feels a little light and loosey-goosey, to use a technical term on a motion. I'm with you on the substance. To be clear, I do feel like if this is so critical that this tree is something that the applicant and others would like to see removed, I feel like shouldering the cost of an arborist report probably is something that they might be willing to do. I can't make that decision for anybody. But I just feel like we have a lack of information to just decide what should be put there, because we could replace it with something that could grow higher. And I'm still, you know, I still thinking about the other tree that was being planted, and we were kind of shooting in the dark about how high this tree might grow. And we had assurances it wasn't going to grow like 50 feet tall, but who knows? So that's my thoughts. I have no problem making the motion to where I thought we were, which was either putting this off until we have an arborist, or directing either staff or to work with the applicant to obtain an arborist report where the applicant would shoulder the cost.
So I might make a
As
suggestion
we-
about the arborist report, if I can interrupt, because we're going to be kind of shouldered with some of this. So I want to be specific what we're asking with respect to the arborist report, because we've deemed it healthy. So we don't need them to go ahead and look at the health of it. I think what we really need is somebody who's going to talk about what type of replacement is appropriate. And that may not be an arborist. It may be a landscape architect. They come a little cheaper. And it may be that that's the appropriate, I mean, I'm just throwing that out there because when you said there should be a replacement tree, my first thought was, and who chooses that? Because
I didn't say tree, just said replacement.
you what?
Appropriate replacement, not necessarily a tree.
And we need to have somebody who can determine that, because I don't believe there's anybody on staff that can do that. And so I would suggest that there is some direction that's included in that, if that's the way you go, that we are able to direct the applicant, if he so deems, to remove the tree, that we have a professional look at that.
I'd be happy with removing the arborist assessment on the front end. It seems like that's less important than making sure the replacement is appropriate. So maybe there's something in getting the applicant to hire a professional who can put forward a couple recommendations on an appropriate replacement in the space and come back with that. And that would be when the vote would be.
Hold on. Could I just amend my motion then?
Sure.
So my motion was to approve removal of the tree and provide appropriate replacement, but then it would say approve removal of the tree. Applicant would work with professional landscaper to provide appropriate replacement to provide adequate screening.
And do remember that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, who does this all day long, is we haven't sent out notices to neighbors with respect to this tree because it was on public property for approval, correct?
No, we sent out the notices.
But for approval, like if we were gonna approve this with a replacement. So one of the things that could happen is that we send out the notice as we would with the tree replacement, with what's gonna happen. And we know the people who are interested tonight, we would send that notice to them. They would have a 10-day period in which to, come and knock on Chris's door. Sorry, Chris. Either appeal, object, for any decision that we would make. And then we would have to consider that.
I may make a comment. So thank you, on the, landscape architect, that I'm completely on board with that. Does not need to be an arborist. Personally, I just feel like it'd be nice to have some more information in terms of either that, our sense about this tree being potentially dangerous at some point, that's accurate, beyond, what the staff report says, and we get more juice on that. Or we know what is going to be put in place. I just would I'd be a little concerned having our motion be approving the removal as opposed to just directing the applicant to obtain a landscaping report. That's my thought.
May I add something also to help clear it up? You can recommend a removal of the tree and have staff come back to the next post meeting with however many approved or appropriate trees that could be planted in its place. And then commission at that point can say, we like this tree.
We meet every 2 months, if that.
Well, November.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're October now. So we're looking at about 6 weeks from now. We'll meet again.
And can you repeat what that course of action
So
would be?
if you do recommend the removal, Dr. Najibi would be able to proceed and move forward with the removal. In the meantime, between now and our November meeting, we would come back at that meeting with a handful of appropriate trees that would provide screening to the neighbors that we would have public comment for. Planning department would send those out to the folks that were involved or
Chris has it down, how it happened.
Go ahead.
You want to go ahead, Chris?
So the way that the process works is I send out a notice to the neighbors within a 300-foot radius, telling them what's being proposed. The plans are on the website. They have 10 days to make their comments. After that 10 days, staff can make a decision. Staff has obviously not made a decision in more than 10 days in this case because it has been controversial. One of my thoughts was if Dr. Najibi came with 3 trees, he can go talk to a landscape architect, get 3 suggestions for what would be appropriate and why it would be appropriate. And then I could send out a letter to all of those neighbors again, stating, that this has been this is what's being proposed now. These are the types of trees that are being proposed. Everything will be on the website for the neighbors to see. They have 10 days to comment. And then it could stay at a staff level. If nobody appeals, if nobody has comments, and then if staff were to approve it, then they would still have a 10-day appeal period. And if it was appealed, then it would go before the DRB, the Design Review Board. But like you said, just because I know one of you had commented that you were ready to approve it until neighbors made comments. So if that's the concern, if we send out the notice to the neighbors with the proposed replacements, then they would have their say. It's just a suggestion.
And if you have said all night, work with your neighbor. You're the neighbor. Town staff is the neighbor that Dr. Najibi would be working with. Needing to work it out. I feel like we're going through too many hoops on approving this. When you guys could work it out. We don't need to be into the absolute fine print.
Chair, I have a comment or observation. So I appreciate that this is a difficult decision. It is noted by staff. They said this is a difficult decision. We also had a number of notes in from the community on Greenwood Beach Road who said like, hey, I want to keep that tree. So I think a final decision between the neighbors, the doctor, the neighbors in the Reedlands, as well as the folks, which is the neighborhood above Tiburon Boulevard right there. And then on Greenwood Beach Road, that they all haven't like come together and said like, okay, let's figure out how to make this a solution together. I think that, and again, I'm played my cards out pretty early on the stage here, is that I don't think it's our place to make that decision. I think those guys need to figure out something, and making a decision to remove the tree now, and then and pay for a landscape architect, which I agree with you on that. I think that's just too early. I think we just deny the petition and say, great, come back and you guys can figure this, have a meeting and come back and say like the solution could be that they come together and get a petition and to top the tree again and just keep doing that, which I know it's an invasive species, but I also think that the town has not totally, as we are fully aware, there's lots of expenses and land that the town must maintain. And this is an area that's not totally maintained. I'm concerned about that waterway there during the storm and what the town's obligations are for that as a runoff into for bay runoff. I'm assuming it's a storm drain piece. It also, there was water in it now, so and it was low tide, so I thought that was kind of weird that there was water in there already. So I think my perspective is that we deny the request. No offense, I think I would totally empathize with what your perspective is, but you let the neighbors figure it out instead of being bureaucratic and making this decision. That's
Go ahead.
One more comment. I may be on an island here, which is totally fine, but I'm a little at a loss as why we either need to approve of removal or deny the removal. Why don't we just skip that part and just direct the applicant to go get more information? And we can be more specific in terms of obtaining a landscape architect report, which sounds like perhaps there's a consensus here on that. And that would provide more time for the applicant to work with those folks on Greenwood Beach Lane. And maybe there's a consensus that comes together. So I just, in essence, I don't think we need to approve the removal without the rest of this information. That seems premature, and I don't think we necessarily need to deny it. It's in effect denied anyways. So I just think the motion could just be, go get more information for us
And come back.
if the applicant so chooses.
Yeah, so I think I can summarize where we are right now, which is 3 out of 4 commissioners don't feel like we should be approving this in today's meeting. And I've heard 3 of us speak. We haven't taken a vote. We're saying, what I'm hearing is that there's energy around getting more information, and more information on one count, and on the second count, some consensus among the community, some agreement. And so maybe we're at a place where it might make sense for a motion for more information or community work for consensus around what a replacement would be.
so I make a motion that we do not accept the applicant's petition and request that they come back at a later time with additional information, including a landscape architect and other community engagement from neighbors that are directly near the tree. Or that's too specific because it's not fair to him to do all those
You're
pieces.
putting a lot of burden on the
On the applicant.
resident. Yes.
So something along those lines, though. I agree with you.
He has the right to top it.
No, he doesn't have the right to top it, actually.
Yes, he has the right to top it.
Well, actually, the town, I have a question on that, and I don't want to get too, but to top it, you have to demonstrate that the tree was not there when you moved in, and then don't you need to have a petition, and then it has to be agreed upon, right? Town, how does the town just say like, yeah, we can top that tree?
He's had that right to do that for years, and it hasn't been something where we negotiate. It's not the same as if you're living somewhere on private property
Right.
and your view is being obstructed, and so you guys work it out as mediation. The doctor comes to us and says, I want to cut this down, and he receives an encroachment permit from us to trim it. We do that with a lot of different trees in the right of ways throughout town.
Okay, thanks. You're right. I agree with you that we're putting too much of a burden, but I will also just go back that removing it. I mean, all those trees that were removed on the eucalyptus on south of Knoll Hill, or how,
We didn't remove this.
well, but many were removed. And there's no plan or strategy to what to do with the property up there. It's just kind of a barren wasteland. I think that we do a lot of react and don't do a lot of planning. And it's to mitigate concerns from staff, and we just don't think about what the ramifications are. And there was clear that the residents of Greenwood Beach Road came and said, like, I want to keep that tree. And I think that we have to be respectful about it.
I'm not opposed to putting the burden on the applicant if it's for a cosmetic reason. So I think it's okay, and I think it sounds like there's enough community engagement that we don't need to approve this tonight, and they can come to some agreements around what would be acceptable replacements and put that forward in the application.
So if I can amend my motion, I make a motion that we don't approve the applicant's request and request that they come back with additional information to help us make a better decision in November, period.
And if I may, still no second, right? So we have some motions out there. I feel I don't feel the need to deny or accept, and what I'm hearing from staff made a lot of sense to me. I would make a motion here, and maybe I don't get a second, but I would make a motion to direct the applicant to obtain a landscaping report on the or arborist report on the eucalyptus tree at the southwest corner of Blackie's parking lot. That includes at least 3 recommendations for replacement tree or bush, and return to post with additional information in that application if the applicant chooses.
Am I allowed a second?
Yeah.
I would like to second that.
I'd like clarification because you said landscape something and arborist, and those are different.
They are different, but I'm happy to remove the arborist aspect of it. I just wanted to create flexibility for the applicant if, you know, maybe there's information that an arborist could obtain about the health of this tree that staff did not obtain in their report. No offense, staff. And so that's why I want to leave flexibility on that. But I'm comfortable striking that portion as well if people would rather just if we have consensus around just doing a landscape architect, that's fine by me.
You can use the word or.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I meant or.
Can you
Yeah.
rephrase it again?
Yes, let me rephrase it. Make a motion to direct the applicant to obtain a landscaping report or arborist report on the eucalyptus tree at the southwest corner of Blackie's parking lot that includes at least 3 recommendations for replacement tree or bush, and returned to post with additional information on the application should they choose to move forward.
I second that.
We have a motion, so roll call, all in favor? Say aye.
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 Any against? Motion passes.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for your
Thank you,
time.
Dr. Najidi.
Guys, appreciate it.
And feel free to reach out if there's anything we can help with.
I will. I mean, if this, are we off the record now?
We're in a public hearing, so
Okay, well,
you should wait till after.
Feel free to send us an email. It's
Okay.
all good.
okay. Who would I send it to?
David? I think David?
I could send you an email maybe? Okay, all right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Okay, that's a big one. I'm afraid we might have another big one, but we also have an empty room, so maybe we'll finish earlier than we think. We are now to the third action item. And this is on the Tiburon's municipal code related to electric mobility devices. And we have a subcommittee from Post that is going to provide an update to the commission with some recommendations. And actually, I was on the subcommittee and put together some of this along with Chairman Burr and, I mean, not Chairman, sorry, Commissioner Burr. And so do we just introduce ourselves? So we just go. Okay. We have a slide deck. Are you able to pull that up, David?
Yes, it's
Oh,
on the
got-
screen. We're ready to go.
We've got it going. So Post is taking this up because there have been a lot of community complaints and noise around e-bikes. This is something that every community in Marin County and probably most communities around the country are dealing with and thinking about, at least communities that have, you know, trails that are highly used. The first question is, what are the town of Tiburon's rules around e-bikes on trails? Before I get into the town, you can go to the next slide, David. I'll start going. So what are the town's rules? Before I even get into the town, I want to just review the research Commissioner Burr did on California state regs, because that preempts any town reg. You can go to the next slide. We have 3 classes of e-bikes. The first class, class 1, is pedal assisted. It can go up to 20 miles per hour. The second class is throttle assisted. You don't need to pedal. You can just use a throttle, and it can go up to 20 miles per hour. And you don't need a license or a permit or an age to drive these throttle assisted. They're kind of like moto bikes in some ways. And then the third class is pedal assisted. It can go up to 28 miles per hour, and you need to be 16 in order to ride those. There's also a whole host or sort of variety of devices that aren't bikes, like e-skateboards, e-boards. You've seen them with the one wheels, e-scooters, and anything else that might be invented that is not classified in 1, 2, or 3. You all should know, everyone should know, that most towns and counties really only allow class 1 and 2 on the trails and paths. These are not allowed on sidewalks for the most part, or completely not allowed on sidewalks. And most use cases, like most of what people are talking about when they consider these codes, they're thinking about bike lanes that are in the road. They're not thinking about separated trails like Old Rail Trail or the Mill Valley Sausalito multi-use pathway. So they're really thinking about what goes on in that like bike lane that's right next to where the cars go. Tiburon code, if you go to the next slide, this is the worst slide in the history of slides. I'm not going to read that. You can go to the next slide. This is just what you need to know about it. The Tiburon code does not allow riding anything, riding or motorized anything. So none of these things, not a regular bike, not an e-bike, not an e-device, nothing on Fountain Plaza or Shoreline Park. No e-bikes or bikes or riding of any kind on any sidewalks in Tiburon. And the Old Rail Trail, the rules are 15 mile per hour speed limit. This should say 8 miles per hour. I'm sorry, I meant to change that. It should say 8 miles per hour when passing or nearby pedestrians on the Old Rail Trail. Old Rail Trail allows class 1 and class 2. Old Rail Trail also allows a host of other devices like roller skates, blades, skateboards, pedal bikes, no wider than 36 inches, strollers, wheelchairs, and related disability conveyances, emergency vehicles, DPW vehicles, and utility public vehicles. That's what's allowed on Old Rail Trail. Our code does not address e-mobility devices such as motorized scooters or the one-wheelers, that whole category that I just talked about. And the Old Rail Trail has some signage, some speed limit signage, but in my view, not much, could be more. Really quickly, I'm gonna try to speed through this. Really quickly, there are challenges. I just mentioned the Tiburon code doesn't include those other devices. The other challenge is that class 2 e-bikes are throttle assisted, so they're kind of like mopeds. And they're allowed on all these trails. And you don't need a permit or an age limit. And until the state law changes that classification, it can be hard for us to do something unless we don't allow them on the trails. Another thing you should know is that even the classifications are sort of defeated because a lot of these bike users and riders have figured out how to basically hotwire the bike so that it can override the speed limit governor and it can go faster than the class would indicate. So if class 1 is max 20 miles per hour, they figured out how to hotwire the bike to go faster than 25. Same with class 2 and 3. So even the classifications based on the speed limits aren't really that useful in some cases. And when trails put up these speed clocks, sometimes they can offer perverse incentives to riders to like hammer it out and go as fast as they can get it to go. All of this is being taken up by nearly every town in Marin, as well as the county. And I reached out to most of the towns and the county and a number of officials in the county, and most of them are in the same quandary, trying to figure out what to do about this. If you base all your code on the type of vehicle, you still don't solve the problem, which is speed and sort of danger and risk. For all those reasons I just named, and no one's really figured it out. However, there's a couple parallels that I think we could look at that actually are slightly ahead of the curve here. You can go to the next slide, David. So what are the other towns doing? There's 2 that I want to just introduce to you. Mill Valley updated their code to add a definition of e-mobility devices. It includes e-bikes, motorized scooters, boards, any other motorized mobility device. They have a code that says no bikes riding or any e-mobility devices on any sidewalks or public facilities. They added a duty to operate e-mobility devices with due care and reduced speed. They have a code that says, or a law that says no double tandem riding on an individual device, and riders must obey all traffic laws. That seems pretty redundant, but one of the things I think they did that has made maybe the biggest difference is they have heavy enforcement on the trails. And or that's what I've been hearing from all the phone calls I've made. And they added Marin County Bicycle Coalition. They run an e-bike safety and education training. They added that as a penalty option. If you get a citation or a ticket for speeding or not wearing your helmet on or not following the laws, you can, instead of paying it, you can go take this e-bike safety class. The most, I think, analogous trail in our vicinity to the Old Rail Trail is the Sausalito Mill Valley Multi-Use Pathway. This is the pathway that you pick up at it's the Blythedale. I'm blanking on that road right there. It's Camino Alto, right. It's the Camino. You pick it up and it takes you across that beautiful like marshland all the way into Sausalito. That has high use, similar use case, just tons of pedestrian and bike and mobility device traffic. And a lot of the same risks and complaints that we have in our community. Their rules there are 15 miles per hour for any rider device with a 10-mile-per-hour slow section that's indicated by signage. And they added a trail roundabout to slow riders down at a particular junction of a bunch of trails. So they did that in that one spot. They only allow class 1 and class 2 e-bikes. Technically, their code doesn't even allow e-mobility devices, but I think we've all seen and we've been out there a lot. It's probably tolerated and not enforced, those e-mobility devices on the trail. They have a lot of signage that has share the path. They called it share the path campaign signage all along the trail. It indicates what you're supposed to do, like move over, yield to pedestrians, you know, et cetera, go to the right, pass to the left, whatever. And then the county sheriff, because that pathway is county managed for the most part, the county sheriff, as well as the town, the Mill Valley Town and Sausalito Town Police do enforce with tickets from time to time. And the county also instituted an e-smart bike sort of training safety program. One other thing that you should know is that Sausalito, Mill Valley, San Anselmo, Corte Madera, and the Marin County Department of Public Works all have appointed standing bicycle and pedestrian committees to kind of review and update code. I would offer, after doing this research and talking to all these folks in these towns in the county, we could look at, and of course, open to the community's feedback and the commissioner's thoughts and comments, but this is what I would say might be a logical way to do this. Our code is missing the e-mobility devices, which makes, I understand that's a loophole, and that may be a question we ask the city council. I understand that's, I mean, the city staff. I understand that's a loophole. The police may not be able to enforce the speed limit on Old Rail Trail for people on those devices because it's not, those devices aren't in the code and they're not even mentioned as permitted on the trail. So we could update our code to define e-mobility devices exactly as Mill Valley did, and I have their code language right here. We could propose our code. We could propose an update to our code, and basically this would all be proposals today. We actually have to send the proposal to town council and they have to approve these code updates. But we could also propose our code to add e-mobility devices once we've defined them to the list of what's permitted on the Old Rail Trail. And then we could propose to add more signage all along the trail that indicates like the share the road, that's similar to the share the trail campaign signage. We could propose to request more enforcement from Tiburon Police Department once that code is updated. And we could propose that they offer the e-bike device, mobility device safety training and education as a penalty option, as the county and the town of Mill Valley have. And if we want, and this is unprecedented, there is no town that's done this yet, but this, in my opinion, this would be going maybe too far or extreme, but we could propose to prohibit class 2 bikes on Old Rail Trail. Noting again, nobody's done this yet. They're allowed on all the trails. That is what I've sort of surmised as things that we could take on today, and we could discuss what we think we should do. I don't think we can make a proposal today. I think we need to give the community time to weigh in. So today we might propose that in the next meeting, we bring those updates and vote on them. Is that conforming with the rules of the procedure?
Yes, if you work on bringing forth the proposed addition to this chapter 23, then we can post that, have it agendized. The public can take a look at it. They'll have some time to digest it, and then we come back to a future meeting where we have a public discussion on what you're actually wanting to recommend to town council.
Okay, so today we would propose the actual updates, and then you would put those into language, you would put those into text and public comment and, you know, share them. And then next meeting, we might vote on those, if that's even something that folks want.
Absolutely. So what you discussed here, what you brought up, all these possible proposals, you would then discuss it amongst the commissioners, and then you would send me that proposal. I will edit it, make it look right. We'll go some back and forth with the subcommittee and then share individually with the commissioners. Once this once we are good with what we want to bring forth to the next meeting, we will agendize it, post it online. And then that is the document that the public will then discuss and look at. So they know what we want to take over to, what we want to recommend to town council.
Okay, thank you for that. I just thought it would be useful to like lay out the options for the process here, but we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves because we still need to take commissioner questions, public comment, and commissioner comments. So we have a whole process still from here. I just wanted us to be clear on what we could take up. I want to offer it to Commissioner Burr, who's on the subcommittee, to offer anything. He's also done a lot of research. And do you have anything you want to add to the presentation?
Yes, absolutely. And all credit to Chair Judge on putting together this deck for today and all the helpful updated information. When we created the subcommittee, I think it was in March, maybe it might have been in May. I know we definitely hope to have changes to present today that was an updated code section. This is a real moving target. Even since we've last met, there's been a lot of action from local communities, from the state. And so we need to continue to be thoughtful on this because the benefits of e-bikes and e-mobility devices, skateboards and scooters are completely real. So critical, as we've all seen, as schools back in giving folks an option to reduce traffic and also reduce emissions. But the safety considerations are completely real. We did pull some stats to kind of bring this to life. So according to CHP's California Statewide Integrated Traffic Record System, which is a database that collects and processes data from accidents. So these have to be reported at collision scenes. So these numbers probably are super low and compared to what actually happens out there. According to this CHP system, there were 9,600 bike crashes in 2022, 225 of those being e-bike involved crashes, which I found surprisingly low. But that was up from only 80 reported e-bike crashes in 2021. And I think as we've seen the prevalence of e-bikes, which is a great thing, grow, those numbers will continue to go up. There was 4 reported fatalities in 2022. And a lot of this has happened down in Southern California, down the San Diego area. They had a death in 2023 earlier this year. I think it was a 16-year-old who had a collision with a vehicle. In 2022, there was an incident as well that has sparked a lot of action down in that northern San Diego County area. We have talked a couple times now as a commission about state work in this, which is critical for us to understand. I did just quickly want to flag 4 things. This legislative session, which just ended a couple weeks ago, there were 2 bills passed. One is SB 381 by Senator Min, and this is requiring the Mineta Transportation Institute down at San Jose State to do a whole study and collect more information on e-bike safety. But the bill, for better or worse, is requiring that study to be done by Jan 1, 2026. So we need to act much faster than that. And there was a second bill that passed, AB 425 by Assemblymember Isaac Bryan, that actually gets at the use of bicycles on sidewalks. So it actually prohibits localities from prohibiting operating a bike on a sidewalk adjacent to a highway or major roadway if there are no other options, no other bike lanes. So both of those bills are pending governor action. So we don't know if they're going to be signed or vetoed or what might happen. And they probably won't, they won't go into effect till Jan 1. So no making excuses. I'm just saying these are ongoing targets or moving targets. Very fascinating. A bill that is pending that became a 2-year bill. So we won't know its fate until early next year. But there is a bill, AB 530, which would actually prohibit a person who is under 12 years old from operating an e-bike of any classification. That bill also would require anybody who doesn't have a CDL. So it's not just folks under 16, it's anyone who doesn't have, who's older than 12, but doesn't have a California driver's license. They would have to come to basically go through a program, obtain a state issued photo ID to operate an e-bike, and have to complete some kind of licensing program that is yet to be designed. So super interesting. One thing that's going to help us though, and it's been encouraging to see what Mill Valley and other communities did on these diversion programs is we had talked before about how AB 1946, which passed last year, directed the CHP to create an online safety training program for e-bikes. And it by September 1st of this year. So CHP did roll that out on August 31st of this year. So just less than a month ago. I've seen it. I haven't done it. But I would encourage my fellow commissioners, if you haven't yet, we can circulate the link to check that out. I think that could be an important tool for us. So, the town, or I'm not sure what Marin County is looking to do, but, a state centralized training program creates a pretty good option for whatever we might want to do. Regardless, we do need to update our code to reflect some of the other devices that are out there and create flexibility. And just in case anyone is watching or listening, I mean, I think, it's the goal of this commission to continue to encourage folks to get out of their cars on the trail, alternative types of transportation. We're all for that. It's just making sure that we're taking advantage of every tool we have to consider safety. So with that, I'm done with my part of the presentation.
Thank you, Commissioner Burr. So we will go to commissioner questions.
Public comment.
Oh,
Public comment?
okay.
But-
I messed that up. All right, public comment.
Chair, we don't have any public comment from Zoom and no public comment from chambers as well so far. So you
Okay,
can
so now we can go to commissioner, do I have to close
Close
public
public
comment? Okay, closing public comment. And then we'll go to commissioner comments.
Okay. Chuck and I both have spent, well, he kind of took over for me. I've spent many years on safe routes to school and trying to make getting kids to school in Tiburon safer. Chuck is now, I believe, at Del Mar still, right? Or no, you're gone. You probably stepped off because you.
Well, no, I'm sitting on as a commissioner for the Parks, Open Space and Trails Commission. I just said I'm going to continue to sit on this
Thank you
call. Yeah,
for doing that. Anyways, we've both spent a lot of time with safe routes to school. My initial thought, and anytime somebody comes in here to propose something new to the parks, we always say, well, that's really great, but it's always about maintenance. Anytime we think about something like speeding on Old Rail Trail, well, that's great. We can say you can't do that, but it all comes down to enforcement. So that's kind of my first ding. And I don't know if, I know we used to have a police motorbike. I don't know, motor e-bike. I don't know if they've been out on the trail or doing anything as of late. I'm definitely in support of no tandem. I've just seen kids with their legs dangling off and I literally close my eyes and just hope that their toes don't get hurt. I could get behind citations with just like getting the bike safety class to get out of the ticket. Through Safe Routes to School, Tiburon does have a bike safety class. So which MCBC runs for Safe Routes to School. So they could add the e-bike safety, especially heavier into those middle school years. We do have Share the Path lollipop signs, which we copied from the Sausalito pathway. They're designed to go up and down and not be up constantly so that it's more of a visual, oh my gosh, here we go. And they're supposed to move around. So they're supposed to go up when school starts and anytime there's been a big break or when the weather breaks in the spring and kids are out biking more. We on post serve as our bicycle pedestrian advisory committee. So that is our role as post. And this is a comment or question for town council. How many e-bike collisions have we had in Tiburon on the roads? And how many on Old Rail Trail? Have we had any reported?
On the Old Rail Trail, I personally know of 2 in this year.
Yeah. I'm sure if we put it into Nextdoor, you would get a whole string that went really far. And then here's the second time my heritage is coming up today. I am a Michigander. I wonder if the Lions won or not. I don't know yet. But growing up in Michigan, we have all these lakes, and it was held in our class, in our middle school classroom. You could take a boater education class at 12 years old. And at 12 years old, you had a whole bunch, it was not in one class. You had to go for several classes. You had to take tests, you had to study, you had to do all that sort of stuff. But at 12, you were handed a piece of paper that you somehow laminated with tape or whatever. But that served as your, like get out of jail card of like, I have freedom of driving a boat and I don't have to wait for my parents to take me somewhere. So I am actually all for 12-year-olds getting more than a couple hours of instruction from wonderful MCBC and safe routes to school. But I'm all for more education and getting these kids actually into a class that has some teeth. Those are my comments.
Chair, I just have a comments or questions. One is on the adding the electric mobility devices, and I don't know all the code sections that in this, I'm looking at the Mill Valley piece. Is it just that we need to add that to our code to say like, yeah, these are okay to be on old rail trail. You can have an electric scooter. You can have a one wheel. You can have I can't remember all the things, but.
Yeah, that it's my understanding, and David, maybe you can confirm this, but it's my understanding that because our code actually specifies, like it goes down device to device. Because it does that and we don't have those devices, there's no way to enforce speed. If we had a different type of code that like didn't say the device and just focused on the speed, we wouldn't need to add it. But now we have this weird loophole. Is that?
That is correct. That is what the police department is waiting for at this time is this electric mobility device, all the different electric mobility devices definitions added into our municipal code so that they can go out there and enforce them.
Got it. So thank you. That's one question. The second actual question is to David is why aren't the lollipop signs up, sir?
So we have one set up by McKegney Green. That is one of the signs got stolen, so we're working on replacement, but we are actually coming back to town or to a post commission with permanent type metal signs that are much nicer than the rebar signs. So it's basically what the same design that's out there, but on metal with decorative type wrought iron with a permanent anchor set set in the ground that we can then just remove and replace quickly. We have an order in because I think so far 9 of our signs have been removed.
Got it. Thank you. And then my other comment, these are more comments. One is, yes, I agree on the enforcement. Yes, I agree on the 2 or 3 generally middle schoolers on a bicycle, any kind of bicycle, even those just totally human powered. And the other comment is I'd be thoughtful about making all a particular class of e-bikes. I'm not maybe not able to go on old rail trail. I've seen and I love it. And it'll be a little bit part of the presentation, but early in the morning at Trestle Glen, you'll see fathers mothers loaded with 2 kids on the backs. It's one of these more cargo e-bikes. And I don't know, those are because of the torque, they might be level 3, but getting on the bike path to take their kids down to read. And I'd hate for us to have the opportunity like, well, gee, those are illegal. Or I mean, we should encourage that more. And yes, e-bikes make it possible for adults to move more weight, like the kids sitting on those back seats, which I think is awesome.
They do, the Mill Valley Code only specify it if it addresses that, because it only specifies no double or tandem on a bike made for one individual. So if it's a proper tandem bike, it's fine.
But no, but it's also the torque of a level 3 bike. So as you
Oh, yeah.
there's a amount of torque allows it to go faster, particularly on flat. So I just want to just be thoughtful that we don't accidentally eliminate a bicycle. We should be thoughtful on that. But I do encourage us to maybe to capture this and then do bring things forward so the town can move forward on some pieces, particularly on enforcement. Thanks.
So it seems like signage would help the enforcement, like it's easier to enforce if everyone on the trail knows. So you're saying we're definitely getting more signage, David?
That is true. Yes,
okay.
we are actually in the process of a design that we're going to bring forward to post to take a look at.
Okay. Well, do we?
Share on that, because the other signs were stolen. So we had signs
Yes,
that I think maybe we approved those right before you joined, possibly.
yes, and I believe those signs may be hanging up in some teenagers' walls. They're nice looking signs. We
I would also, just, I don't have them. I would comment that I agree that we shouldn't prohibit a class. Now, class 3 is not allowed. Isn't that correct? It's already not allowed. It's not allowed on any of these
Yes.
trails. That's supposed to stay on the roads. But class 1 and 2 are allowed.
yes,
Yeah. And class 2 is the throttle one. And I agree. I don't think we should prohibit that. I think, I agree with you, Commissioner Burr, and you, Commissioner Hornberg. We want more people on whatever the device is on the trails, and we have a traffic problem and we have a climate problem. So I think it's, I agree with that, not prohibiting class 2.
Thank you. Sure. A couple questions. One for staff. David, the new sign design. Are there any I haven't seen the county implement this, but are there any or any consideration about a sign that is specific to e-bikes or e-mobility devices?
oh, so the signs right now that we're working on are they're the lollipop signs that have
Yeah.
been approved, but not the paper.
I just don't have to catch on. I know that the design, but in terms of the substance of the signs, I don't recall any of them mentioning like flagging e-bike safety specifically. Obviously, it says like slow down, be considerate, those things. But there's not one that is designed that specifically mentions e-bikes or e-mobility devices. right?
No.
Okay, I'll work on that and poke around. And then question,
I have a suggestion.
please.
Don't be lazy, pedal your bike.
I like that.
Don't use the throttle.
I like that. We have to, because there's a middle ground here. We also don't want to encourage the speed and all that good stuff. I like that a lot, but something that's catchy, I think makes sense to just remind folks. And then question for Commissioner Vice Chair Hornbook and Commissioner McInerney, the school safety program that Tiburon has, how do they implement that? Like, is that something that is part of, like, how do they roll that out to the students?
So they have specific training classes that they'll come to the PE class at like Del Mar, so Del Mar Middle School, and they'll be somebody from either the Bicycle Coalition, Marin County Bicycle Coalition, or somebody from staff from the Safe Routes to School, and they will go through like, this is what you need to do. It's usually the 6th graders.
Yeah.
So it'll be in a PE class, and that actually part of the discussion was like, should we include more e-bike safety on that piece? So it's in the PE teachers they're like, that's great, bring it in. So it's all, they really focus in on that. So it's both safe riding to 6th graders, and then they also have a similar one at Bel Air, but it's much more targeted to the 3rd and 5th graders. I don't believe they had one at Reed. They might, I can't recall.
Sometimes yes, sometimes no.
Yeah.
Thank you. I didn't realize that. And that potentially could be a really good resource just as we're thinking about.
Yeah, they're a great resource.
Just keep it, it's one PE class.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's one.
Yeah, it's short.
45 minutes or 90, depending on the day.
So, well, I have the floor here. We're not recommending any action at the moment. One thing that Mill Valley did, Commissioner Judge did this research, so I read this somewhere. I do believe they did have a couple community meetings, on this. We have not. That is something that we might want to consider. And then as folks will recall, we did have somebody from TPD come in, I want to say in our first meeting this year. So I couldn't find it in my notes, but at the time, I don't remember them having any citations at all. I did see TPD out there, you know, kind of the first couple weeks of the schools, when school was back in, so they were out there. And just kind of musing out loud here, I do think thinking about a community meeting at some point in time before our next meeting might be worthwhile. And I'll stop there.
Well, we could actually take an action, isn't that right, David? What you explained at like the beginning of this agenda item was that we could propose the update to define e-mobility devices. And we could propose an update to the code to add e-mobility devices to the list of what is allowed on Old Rail Trail. What you would do with that is,
So once you provide that list or kind of a rough draft, I'll clean it up. I will send it to the subcommittee to review. If once you're okay with that draft, then I will send it to the commission. Individually, they can report back to me on if they would like any additions or changes, then we'll discuss it as a subcommittee, come back with a final draft, which at that point, I will then agendize that for the next post meeting, put it online so that the public has a chance to review the changes, and then we can discuss it at that meeting. And then at that meeting, pending if there are any comments from the public for it or changes or revisions, then we can take those changes or the amended changes and recommend those to town council.
okay.
So at this point, the motion you can, well, you probably don't even need to do it. You can actually, we can continue this meeting to this item. We can continue this agenda item to the next post meeting. And at that post meeting, we'll continue discussion with an actual draft code.
Okay. Do we want to do that? I mean, I have the code now, but wait,
What I have to do, what I'll do is with that code is then I will take that code and put it in our ordinance
Got
template.
it.
So
Okay.
it
yeah. So do we want to have a motion to do that? Do we need to even make a motion for this? No.
no, you don't.
Okay. So,
You can just say we'll continue this agenda item to the next post meeting for discussion and recommendation of town council.
okay.
Mhm.
So for folks listening, we will prepare the proposed update to code. That will be put in some sort of public notice from the town and on the website. And at the next commission meeting, we will discuss, take public comment, and hopefully vote on whether we update the code or whether we're sending it to the town council for an update.
Correct.
Okay.
Super.
We have 3 discussion items. The first one is Tiburon Parks and Recreation Master Plan. Do we have anyone to provide?
Yeah,
subcommittee to
so-
provide an update?
I'll tee it up. So basically, discussion item, we have 3 discussion items. First of the 3 is in regards to the Parks Master Plan update. We've had few events that WRT has done. 2 pop-up events. One was Main Street, Friday nights on Main Street on June 9th. And then we had the Classic Car Show on the 17th. And during those 2 pop-up events, some of the questions that were asked were, what do you love about Tiburon Parks? What features and qualities should be added or, changed or revised? And WRT had some nice boards out there where residents and visitors were putting Post-it notes on what they'd like to see in and around the parks and what kind of amenities that, should be added. They took all of that information and are creating, their own data sheet with all these recommended changes so that they can start with their draft Parks Master Plan, start building it. The second event that they had the community workshops. They had the first community workshop was September 11th. It was an in-person workshop here at Town Hall Council Chambers. Commissioner McInerney was present here along with Mayor Jack Ryan and Councilmember Holly Thier, along with many other residents. We had probably at least 15, 16 residents here present. It was very lively. We broke out in about 6 different tables and had some good, meaningful discussions again on, what their visions are, what the desired outcomes are for the parks master plan, and what kind of recreation facilities and programmings that they would like to see here included in the master plan. The next day, September 12th, they had a repeat of this community workshop, and this was a virtual meeting, basically a repeat of the in-person, so that if anyone didn't make it, they could come to the virtual meeting. It was a repeat. We had about 5 or 6 folks join us on that virtual meeting. Again, a lot of good discussion. I would say the virtual meeting, it seemed to me that more discussion on pedestrian and bicycle facilities and walkability and ridership in town with trails. But again, a lot of good information that WRT was able to collect for their data. This past Sunday on the 24th, we had the walking tour, which started out at Blackie's pasture parking lot. This was focused mainly for Blackie's pasture, McKegney Green, the ponds, the playground south of the Knoll Park. Again, with this workshop, as they walked by each feature, questions were asked. And again, WRT took in all of the recommendations and discussions that the public had for that walking tour. So right now, also I want to say that our survey is closed. Our goal was to collect at minimum 250 surveys so that we could have a statistically valid survey. We've collected in the little over 400 at this point. So we're very pleased with the survey result, with the survey, the number of surveys that were received. So right now, WRT's consultant is working on all of that data. And the next step is WRT will be here at the November post-commission meeting to provide you an in-depth report of where they're at and the data they've collected and how much where they're at with their draft master plan. And with that, I'll have Commissioner McInerney add to it. She's been heavily involved as well.
Thank you, David. So at the in-person and online meeting, I kind of took snapshots of, we did these really big boards and we had really good discussion. And there was over 25 different things proposed of what people what are things that parks need improving on or things they'd like to see in the parks. And the ones that kind of came up all the time, the top one is access to water. People want access to water. They want a boat ramp, not like a small boat, not motorized boat ramp or kayak launch, SUP, whatever. What?
I thought you meant drinking water for
Oh,
a second.
no. I'm sorry, access to recreate on the water. And then the other top one was play structures. And people really wanted play structures that were for multiple ages, which also ties into people wanting multi-generation programs and senior amenities. The third most popular one was people want community events back. They want things that are going to bring everyone in the community together. And it's something they often talked about either at South Knoll Park or on McKegney, Shoreline Park. They really liked the community events and they want to see more of them. And the other one that was really popular was signage being unclear and wanting to see maps of the trails. Where are the trailheads? Because a lot of people don't know where they are. And then parking, speed limit on the Old Rail Trail was brought up a few times. We had some green team members there, so you could imagine talk about invasive species was going to be on there. And one of the things is WRT is not just looking at our parks and assessing what do people want or what should be put in the parks. WRT is also looking at all of our facilities. So they're looking at Dairy Knoll, the ranch. They're looking at any other buildings that we have in town. They're looking at our programming. So they're looking at what does the ranch offer and is it making it to all the people that, you know, what else could they offer? And they're looking at maintenance of the buildings, but also maintenance of the parks. So this is a really big thing. We haven't gotten into all, like, we haven't even touched that, but they are looking at it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I have two questions if I can. David, for the tour, how many people were there?
There were about 15 people at the tour.
Thank you. And then for the facilities, do they also include the library?
It's not town.
Well, the ranch isn't town either.
It's a joint between Tiburon and Belvedere. It's,
The ranch is.
yeah.
Right, but you looked at the ranch, the building, I guess the building's in Tiburon, so you looked at that, but you didn't look at the library?
I'm gonna shoot that to you, David. It was
Yes.
on my list. So I did put it on there for you.
We did, yes. They're not looking at the library because it is not a town-owned facility.
But the ranch isn't either.
But the ranch is a joint powers between Belvedere and Tiburon.
And so is the library. I think that's a missed opportunity for the largest building in our community. And maybe that can be noted in the paper because that is the largest community space we have in town is the library. Sorry, I'll get off my soapbox. Thank you.
Do we have any other comments on the discussion items? Or this one? Discussion item 1.
The only thing I'll add here is really encouraging to hear those numbers. Super disappointed in myself. I didn't make any of those. I wanted to make it out to the tour, but NFL Sunday happened. And I just, thank you both for the report. It's encouraging to hear a lot of the things we've talked about on this commission with a sense that the community would like to see some of these changes and some more action, opportunities to bring the community together, improve play spaces in particular. It's encouraging to hear that these are all being brought up and that, the amount of responses we've received on the survey, that's fantastic. So thank you both for the report.
Want to echo the thanks. Thank you. Okay, we have discussion item 2, Tiburon safe routes to school. Commissioner Hornbrook.
Yeah, so thanks. So I thought the presentation.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
put it up there for you.
I'll slow roll it. So I just want to look at some of the data, David. I think that'd be interesting for the commissioners. So there's a program called Safe Routes to School that Angela alluded to. That's both for Reed, Bel Air, and Del Mar. It includes both the Tiburon and Belvedere. So staff members from Belvedere and Tiburon are asked to come to the meeting. Actually, it's usually Tiburon. So David's usually on the call. Councilmember Fredericks was on the call. There's staff members it's funded through TAM, which is the Transportation Authority in Marin. I always forget what the acronym is. So it's funded basically through the public. And it's throughout the entire county of Marin. So it's just a great program for educating youth about riding and walking to schools predominantly, and then also just finding other ways of transportation. The goal is to get people out of single ride vehicles, basically. So it's a great opportunity, and it also talks about road safety and trail safety. So we usually have somebody from the great state agency of Caltrans on the call. And usually it's an interesting time about when they're updating things about, again, safety across roads. So like the whole intersection at Blackfield and Tiburon Boulevard, which is down by the Cove, that was like the discussion of like making sure the bike lanes are there and all the lights and all the components. They're going to be spending some time at the intersection at Avenida Miraflores and Tiburon Boulevard, because there's it's called a lamb chop, which is the way the islands are there, and they're trying to get the standardization of those pieces. So it's a really good discussion when Caltrans is there, and they've got when some well-informed people are there. Sometimes we get less well-informed people from Caltrans showing up who are like, oh, just jump on the meeting. So it's just a great thing. This is just as the general piece. Dave, if you just want to jump through. So their meeting that they have meetings 3 times a year, September, January, and May, with also PTA representatives. And that's how I first got engaged. That's how Angela first got engaged. And then I've stayed on it. I've asked to be on it because I'm part of the commission, and you guys should it'd be great maybe if Angela wants to jump back on, or we have actually somebody from the Belvedere Parks Open Space. Is she still on that commission? But somebody from their Parks and Open Space or Parks and Trails Commission was also on it. So as part of it, there's a 3-year evaluation about like how people are using trails, riding school, and it's either really green or kind of green. And then they did a deep dive. And I thought one of the really interesting pieces was, if you want to jump to slide, it talks about like impediments and active transportations, but one of them, it's slide, I don't know where I am on this. Travel modes, and basically 8 schools out of all the county, there we go, have green trip rates higher than 65%. And a green trip rate is either bicycling, riding, walking, or taking the bus. The exciting part is that one of our schools is one of those schools. So there's actually just great participation by our school system on this. I guess, David, if we want to jump all the way to the kind of current conditions, which is, you want to keep, it's like 3 slides. Keep going. Yeah. So this is kind of where things are. So on a countywide basis, 57% of all trips are green. So it's either on a bus, they're walking, or they're riding their bicycles. And that was in 21, 22. If you want to jump to the next slide, and then you see where our schools are with those little red arrows. So, and I don't know how they did all the math, and so please don't ask me how they did all the reductions, but basically we had a 28% reduction in basically vehicle miles traveled for all of our school district, which is pretty exciting. So that's the Reed School District for those who don't have kids or didn't have kids. And those are the different school districts throughout. And this is all K through 8. The Safe Routes to School also works with the high schools if they want to, but it's really targeted at all these different K through 8 school districts that are in, or K through 12 within Marin County. If you want to jump to the next slide, David. So this is just going into each of the different trips. So you see like % green trips, what are active green trips? And again, active green trips are bicycling or walking. So, I mean, Del Mar's 40% of the kids are either walking or riding a bike to school, which is awesome. And you also see that Reed is lower, and those are the little kids. So that's the pre-K to 2nd grade. And then Bel Air is at 27%. But I just thought the numbers were great, and we were hoping that an article was going to be written in the ARC on this. Councilmember Fredericks was going to follow up with Emily, I think, because it was an education piece, but I don't know if it ever got there, which just, again, to let the community know, like, doing pretty well overall, with, 67% of the kids at Del Mar are on a bus or walking or riding, which is for those of us who drive on Tiburon Boulevard between the times of 7:30 to 8:45 or anytime after 2:30 and live on the southern part of the city, it can be a miserable existence. So I think this is just a good thing. If you want to jump to the next, David. So that's just the different modes. Walking, and those are the different schools or the colors. But I think what would be really interesting, if you want to go to the distribution of where the kids are. Keep going. Yeah, that one. Sorry. Maybe it's after discussion. Keep going. Yeah. No, because it gets into each of the schools. Yeah, so this is like, each of these dots is where a kid lives. And then how they are close to the schools. So this is Bel Air, which is up off of Karen Way and Blackfield. So that's where the big orange dot is. And you see where all the kids are, and you see like how far they are. Now that's our challenge as a town, is that, and Angela's familiar with this, is that as a school district, like where if you live on the southern side, which is where I live, like if you're down here, you got to truck all the way over there for your kid between 3rd and 5th grade. If your kid at Reed, you're like super happy, you're right here. And then Del Mar is right in the middle. But this is just where the distance is and how people go. And actually in the call, they were looking at the neighborhood over in, I can't remember the name of the neighborhood. Mercury, Belver East, yeah. At Belver East, and like how those kids could get to school easier, because there's a big pocket of kids there. And one of them is up the stairs. Up the Jefferson Stairs. It'd be great if we had a map there and they could be able to go up those stairs and then get up to Reed Ranch Road. Then Reed Ranch Road has a back door into Bel Air. It's easy. You don't even have to deal with Tiburon Boulevard. It's super easy. It's just publicizing that more, because a lot of the families may not know that. So that's, again, the work that we're doing here. I mean, that's the big picture, is like, well, what do we matter? Is the work that we do here on the trails and the stairs, and publicizing that more will lead to more of this, of transportation, a green transportation, of people walking or riding bicycles versus having their parents drive them. And the more we can publicize that and promote that, it's just good for the community, because then it reduces the number of cars on the road. And again, during those periods of time, I mean, the ARC even has that in their paper. Be concerned about driving. There's congestion times on Tiburon Boulevard. I think that would just be good something. So this is the next slide was Del Mar, and then where the kids are, obviously, because it's in the middle, and then Reed is the last one. And I mean, and interestingly enough, it's not surprising, as a Reed, it's down all the way here, but I mean, there's a lot of folks in Belvedere Island who don't have kids. So it's just not as much of a kid density. A lot of the kids live kind of right by in Belron, and you'll notice you know where the kids are, and like over near Bel Air mostly. There's one other thing so that's really on this. One thing that this doesn't touch on, and it might be out of our scope, but one of the reasons that kids don't go to Bel Air as often is parts of Greenwood Road, and it may not have been called Greenwood down there, gets flooded behind there's some transformers right at the 76 station. It's a Greenwood Code Road. Yeah, and it's like, it's part of its unincorporated Marin County. The residents who live there, probably it drives them crazy too, but people won't put their kids on it, even on an e-bike, because it gets flooded. And it's like where two jurisdictions come together, and whether or not somebody wants to be accountable for that. And that's something, again, it might be out of our scope, but something to encourage the trail. So thanks. Does anybody have any questions about Safe Routes to School?
Great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank the people from Safe Routes to School. They're the ones who put that together. Yes, sir.
Just quick, the question was gonna be, what are the challenges? You hit most of them. I mean, distance, but I do wonder, were there other challenges that were identified? Like, is safety a consideration? I mean, we talked a lot about that. Is that something that it comes up? I mean, I presume that is preventing folks who otherwise would ride a bike or walk to school. Other than distance, like what are?
Well, I mean, part of it is safety. So they'll safety and number of buses, actually. So like there's a Bel Air bus that's actually sold out, and it's the Bel Air bus that moves all the kids from the southern part of town to Bel Air. It's called the Magenta Line. If we can get into the details. And one of those is it's labor. There's not enough drivers. And then there's another issue is crossing guards. I mean, there's a woman, a resident of our town who helps manage the crossing guards, and she was actually working the crossing guard at San Rafael and Tiburon Boulevard. And I just happened to know that because I was driving by and I gave her a shout out. But it's crossing guards, because there's crossing guards at where your house is, off of Stewart. There's crossing guards at every one of those intersections, and that's one of the issues. Actually, they reduced the number of crossing guards at Blackfield and Tiburon Boulevard because they added those bicycle lanes. So they felt, this is TAM, felt that they didn't need to have a crossing guard there. However, some people during our safe routes to school said, yeah, we want that crossing guard there. Because again, it's safety. So I think one of the limitations is safety. One of the ease of getting there. During the rainy season, people don't want to ride on Blackfield. It's a great road to go from Blackies to Bel Air. But I mean, I wouldn't want my kid going through, 3 inches of rain of high tide during a king tide. So, and that's kind of like don't know how we're going to deal with that. And then the town does do a great job of trying to increase abilities to do that. And one of the things is on Trestle Glen. There's our desires to add a bike lane on that. But it's funding and safety, right? Because there's a ton of kids that live over in Paradise Cay, which is technically unincorporated Marin County, but they jump on and try to get them here safely because all those kids have to take buses. Because it's not really safe to get them onto Paradise and then Paradise to Trestle Glen and then down to the the rail. Now the old rail trail is great and everybody loves it. If everybody lived along that mechanism, then we would have probably less traffic and less people driving on the secret way to get from Trestle Glen to Rod Boulevard without going through that intersection. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you for taking over, first of all. I appreciate you staying on and doing all the work.
Sure.
I was just going, so when I was there and I was doing a lot of work with PTA and I'm on the Bel Air School District website. And Marin County, we did these maps. And they are not on the website anymore.
No.
So we have these.
Yeah.
And they have suggested routes and they have stop signs and where crossing guards are. And Bel Air kind of has this weird route because we wanted the bikes and the cars going in opposite directions. So we have this arrow that shows the bikes in the morning should go all the way down Blackfield and turn right onto Karen because the cars should be turning right on Cecilia and then turning on Leland and then turning on Karen and taking a left onto Blackfield. So the cars should be going counterclockwise and the bikes should be going clockwise, which would mean that the bikes and the cars are not in the same street.
So that's the fact that that's not on their website is surprising because actually we talked about that the fact that Bel Air and Del Mar have those maps was a checkbox and Reed does not, but was a checkbox like we have it. But the fact that it's not on the website, the Del Mar, my replacements at Del Mar actually asked me for that map. And I was like, yeah, hold on, I got it. So I gave them the one for Del Mar. That's it. So
yeah, so Del Mar is also, I found these on Safe Routes to School Marin. They're back on there.
but they're not on, but they're not on the school's website.
They're not on the
they need to
schools,
be.
so you'd have to, and it's not, I guess, if you go to the school website, it's all the links and everything I put in a bazillion years ago, so you guys might want to check and make sure those links.
Yeah, I'll
are
mention, I mean,
live
it
and
was,
working.
I should have also said that also on these calls are representatives from the school district. However, and it was, I kind of identified in the call is that the Bel Air principal was on the call and the Del Mar vice principal was on call, but nobody from Reed was on the call, which is kind of a little bit kind of typical of what happens, unfortunately. Part of it is because the kids don't walk and ride that much, as you guys saw, it was 10%, but we still want them to ride the bus. They're actually the highest bus riders and biggest carpoolers. So, but yeah, that's, thanks to Angela for mentioning that. I will actually make sure and reach out to the two principals of those two schools to make sure that they reattach those links or double check that. So thanks.
And have they been doing bike trains for Reed?
No, there's not. I mean, for the other members, there's something called bike train. So a group of kids will get together with like an adult and then they'll ride together, safety in numbers. But you need to have volunteers to do that. And that's the biggest challenge. Also, just to give kudos to Angela, she also made up signs and actually stood at the intersection of Cecilia and Blackfield to make sure that people went the right directions, that bikes went one way and cars went another. I think her hands were maybe like this, or I think it was like this probably.
My daughter also helped. Yeah.
So, and then there was the signs would be left in a neighbor's bush for use the next day. So with all these pieces and it may be in reported is that you need to have not a significant, but at least some community engagement and involvement by the parents. To be holding up signs, to be leading bike trains, and also to request changes to be made on bicycle routes. So it helps to have an engaged community. Chair, any questions? Are you good?
No, it's great. Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you both.
Thanks, David, for showing those. I appreciate you doing that.
Okay, we have a final discussion item, which is an update to the commission on town projects from staff.
Thank you, Chair. So as far as public works projects in and around town, three obvious ones that you've seen is our paving projects that we have going on. Our first project, which was a pavement rehabilitation project with Team Gelati, that completed they completed their work last week. We have one right now that's going on Eastview. They're about 3 weeks into it. Complete rehab of Eastview from Alcatraz to Alcatraz, curbs, valley gutters, asphalt, complete redo of that street. Last time I believe pavement was placed out there was in the 80s. So this is a full-on street rebuild out there. There's about 3 to 3.5 weeks of work remaining there as well. And we are right now 1 week into our pavement maintenance project, which is slurry sealing probably around 40 streets in and around town. Slurry should start, I believe, the week of October 9th, and it's pretty quick. There's no digging, there's no trenches out there. It's just basically putting on some nice oil, tack oil, and slurrying the streets, maintaining them for the next 5-6 years. So those are our paving projects. One thing that I did apply for today, actually submitted the intent was the Class 2 bike lane and sidewalks on Trestle Glen between Tiburon Boulevard and Paradise. So a grant opportunity came back up again. We applied for this grant 2 years ago and we were not selected. So we've done a lot of the legwork already with the preliminary plan. So we submitted that over today. That's about, well, in this market that we're in right now, it's probably about a $2 million project to put in the Class 2, widen the shoulders and put in some sidewalks. So we submitted that grant, paperwork over, our intent to apply for it with a lot of the supporting documents that we have. So we're going to wait and see. You're saying in November, towards the end of November and December, we're going to get directions on submitting the actual grant and exhibits for it, but our intent was already submitted. Those are our large projects and grants that we submitted for. So I've got it's open right now. If you have any questions as far as our projects, any projects I haven't mentioned that are going around town, I'll be happy to discuss those with you.
I have a question. The trash cans, the 3-bin trash cans that were, who approved those?
Town council.
What meeting? Just so I could see the.
Oh, I want to say that was probably check the March or April agenda. I'll find out here. I'll let you know.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The big belly garbage cans. Yeah.
Yes. And we just spent a lot of time and effort making drinking fountains on Old Rail Trail and making sure that they looked right and matched and all this stuff. And then some big trash cans showed up.
Any other questions? Okay, well, that is the conclusion. Then I think we move to adjourn, right?
Correct.
We adjourn. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.